Welcome to this special presentation from JMI, the Jewish Music Institute, which is the second in a two-part series of conversations between Songlines magazine, JMI, and the artist Nani. This second episode is brought to you by JMI and the artist Nani Vazana. JMI trustee Dr. Vanessa Paloma Ebaz will now be in conversation with Nani, discussing her new Ladino album, Kechaber, which will be launched as part of the EFG London Jazz Festival 21 at Pizza Express Live in Holborn, London, on Sunday the 14th of November, and will feature a pre-concert panel discussion on the album The Artistry, featuring Songlines Editor-in-Chief Simon Broughton, JMI trustee Dr. Vanessa Paloma Ebaz, and the artist Nani. Tickets are available via the JMI website. We now welcome Dr. Vanessa Paloma Ebaz and Nani to the program.
Hello, it's great to be here with you, Nani. I'm thrilled to have this conversation before this fabulous show and the launch of the new CD. So where are you now? Tell us.
I'm at my home in Amsterdam. Nice to see you, Vanessa. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You're in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And Amsterdam is also such an important place historically for the Judeo-Spanish community. So do you connect to that part of the Amsterdam Jewish history through your music?
Well, it came in recently because, like, when I was doing the research for text for the new album, I connected with Sephardic rabbi in Leiden in the Netherlands, and he showed me this whole library of ancient texts, not only religious texts but also secular texts. That was they were very interesting to discover, because before I did this research, I was only aware of the religious texts and the traditional songs, and I was really thrilled to find out that there is also secular poetry and plays and newspapers that were written in Ladino, so it makes it even relevant today.
Yeah, so this is the thing that I think is so valuable about what you're doing, is that this connection that so many people think about Jewish languages as liturgical.
Yeah.
And then how one can bring that, and actually this secular voice, which is very often a women's voice, right? And so how interesting that it's a rabbi actually that's showing you the secular as well.
Yeah. And the thing is that, I mean, Ladino was mainly a language, especially in the Middle Ages, that was spoken by the women of the community, because the men went to synagogue and they mainly spoke Hebrew throughout the day, and then the women that stayed home, they had to learn the local languages. They were like Latin-based languages, to converse with the neighbors, to communicate with merchants, to gossip, to exchange recipes, to whatever, they needed an outlet, and they kind of developed that language to be their own. And then originally, since it was a matriarchal language, like this, we don't know today that that was such a big expression back then for women through this language. And now to rediscover it today, it's kind of a feeling of emancipation, because the current times also give a lot of leeway to the female perspective, and then exploring the female perspective through the eyes of the Iberian women of 500 years ago. It's exciting, and it feels relevant and not archaic, and diverse, really different, because it's a different worldview that we don't find in other mythology or anthropology that we're used to.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's so important is that this concept of women's voices that people have thought for some reason that were silent, but they actually weren't. Yeah. And they haven't been silent during pre-expulsion, and even in all the post-expulsion, right? They have not been silent. These women have been singing, they've been writing, they've been speaking, they've been gossiping, and they've been teaching, right, the younger generations. So So how do you feel that you're kind of inscribing yourself into that long chain of women?
Well, I mean, it's not that I feel a direct parallel with it, because I don't feel like I'm teaching the next generation about the past, or that I'm kind of, that I'm creating a parallel matriarchal line of wisdom, because like it feels too big to be true. And especially if you are an artist, you want to keep doubting yourself all the time to stay creative, because if you feel content, then your search stops. But maybe, hopefully, my search of roots can inspire other people for their own roots digging. And I see that there is an awakening, like especially with the last 5, 6 years since the DNA testing has become available. So a lot of people are trying to find remnants of their past within their everyday life. I think it also has to do with digital communication that is spreading. So some children, for instance, are now born into a world where you only text your friends and you don't meet with them after school. That, like, you have a virtual existence rather than a physical one. Sometimes that's even more pronounced. So then you have to search for meaning. And if you search for roots, it gives you meaning. I don't know if my search for roots is from the same place, because it's hard to lay your finger on it. I do know that I had what I call a destined moment when I visited Morocco, and I wasn't in touch with Ladino music for 20 years or so. And then on the streets, I heard people singing a melody of a song that my grandmother used to sing to me when I was a kid. And then that something inside me exploded, because I haven't seen my grandma for like 18 years, because she passed away. And then all of a sudden her existence was brought back into my life by a few hundred people singing a song on a celebration on the street. And that's what brought me back to Ladino and starting to explore the culture. So in a way, it was embedded in me, when I was a kid, but I forgot about it. And now I'm rediscovering it as I go.
Wow. And so what was the song?
Well, it sounded a lot like the song Cuando el Rey Nimrod. So it was not very, not 100% the same, but that there was like, you have that melody, da 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 da. So you had like, it was more like da 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 da. A little bit different, like two steps are different, but it was almost the same. And then they sang it in Arabic. And then you think like, okay, I know this song. I don't know where I know this song from. And then while it's continuing to play, you think, hey, she sang that in the kitchen when I was like 4 years old or something. And that was a flashback moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing that's so powerful about that is that there are all these studies that talk about how we have like these sonic worlds that we carry within us, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes they're, like you said, they're embedded, right? They're embedded at a very young age, and they're embedded in the quotidian, daily. That's why these songs from the inner sphere are so important, right?
Yeah.
The ones that are sung, when you're going to sleep, or when you're cooking, or when you're just, sweeping the floor, the ones that you're not thinking about, and then all of a sudden and that's also the music that is the music that has no author very often.
Yeah.
It's like authorless and performerless. It's not really about, it's communal music, right?
Yeah.
And then to make that shift, we're in the generation where we're bringing that communal music out into the stage, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're doing these other interactions with that music, and having performers bring it out to audiences that might not even know it, and then even write new music, which is what I want to ask you about, is then what, from that moment, that seminal kind of explosion moment, what took you to then plunge yourself into writing new music?
Well, it took time. It was not, it didn't happen right away. So I remember throughout this trip, like I played in the Jazz Festival, in the Jazz Festival in Tangier. And then I had only 3 days to visit Fez, my grandma's hometown. And throughout the trip, I had like these songs starting to come up. And when I came back home, I called a friend of mine and I said, well, do you know this thing about Ladino music? My grandma used to speak Ladino, and I heard this song on the street in Morocco. Maybe we could jam, like maybe we can find some songs and try it out. And I just looked it up on the internet. I just went on YouTube. I just went on YouTube and I thought, like, yeah, let's find Ladino songs. And then of course you find the 5 main classics, which is like, yeah, hardly any new recordings or any alternative songs. You have like a list of maybe 15 standards that everybody knows. And then the same 5 songs they have 200 different renditions. And it was difficult to find other songs. So I started researching more and more. And then by the end of this research, that took about 2 years, I released a traditional Ladino album. It's called Andalusian Brew in 2018. And it was, so we toured with that. And that was like an amazing rediscovery, because all of a sudden I came in contact with people that came to see the shows, and they were like a lot like my grandma. I was all of a sudden connected with a generation that I completely forgot about. And then it started bugging me about, after 2 years of touring with this material, that I don't have anything of my own to present. Because I'm a singer-songwriter, it's my thing. That's what I did before. I released 3 albums of my own songs prior to that one. And something was missing. So then I came in contact with the Amsterdam Roots Festival, and I suggested to them to do a commissioned piece that will explore new Ladino music from different cultures. And then we had a singer from Turkey and coming in, a singer from Morocco, and I wrote the music, like 90 minutes of music, and we explored this together. And when this was over, I thought, like, yeah, I need to release an album with these songs. So then I did some more research. I went to the Sephardic library in Leiden, and the rabbi introduced me to all these old, fascinating texts that seem so progressive, although they were written in the 9th or the 11th or the 13th century. And then I thought, well, what is more fitting than to do an album in an Asian language on modern topics? Like, why don't we just make it something relevant and not focus on nostalgia, just do something new with it. And that's where I started writing the texts and the music to the new album.
And so in the texts, are you inspiring yourself from the topics from those poems?
Yeah.
And if so, what are like the main topics that you are then engaging with? Because I mean, one of the things that I think is that we always think that, just because something is 1,000 years old is that it's not relevant to us anymore. But actually, we humans have not really changed that much. Maybe technology has changed, but we are like basically the same. And so
evolution did not take us further emotionally.
Voilà, yeah, that's it. It's like we experience the same things. It's just we have different technologies to deal with it. And okay, something happened in the Enlightenment that kind of like did a certain kind of a intellectual kind of break. But other than that, really, we are the same kind of, we live and experience in the same ways. So I'm really interested in hearing what are your like topics that you've kind of like pulled from this ancient into the modern, that maybe is the unbroken thread.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I guess it's still a discovery, right? Like you have to go on with it as you go along. But like I focus a little bit on the female perspective. So Ladino culture has a lot of, generally songs even, they have a lot of mother-daughter dialogues. So I have mother-daughter dialogues in the new songs as well. So for instance, I have a song about the custom of arranged marriage, and a daughter who is rebelling against that custom of arranged marriage, and she wants to marry out of love and not for for fortune or for a treaty between families. There's a song that portrays a part of a poem from Shmuel Anagid, so it's talking about homoerotic poetry. It's called El Gazela, which means the gazelle. There is a song Una Segunda Piel, which means a second skin, and that's about an alternative passing away ceremony. That's actually an interesting story and it's worth its own conversation because there is this custom called La Mortaja that when you reach like around, let's say, golden years, like the age of 90 or the age of 80, you throw a big party, you invite your friends to sew around you the shroud of the dead that you will be laid in the grave in with later on, which is like this crazy morbid thing, but at the same time it symbolizes rebirth because you
It's not morbid
emerge
at all. Yeah.
from this cocoon alive and happy and supposed to leave all your worries behind. So I wrote the song as a happy song. It's about rebirth rather than death.
And I know that in Turkey, actually, the mortaja was done with the same swaddling cloth that you were swaddled in when you were a baby.
As a baby. Yeah, I also have a song about fadas, las fadas, the fairies, about fairies, and that's another custom. So when a baby girl is being born, they pass her around in a circle, and then the people who stand in a circle, they embody the spirit of the good fairies, and while doing so, you're supposed to confuse the bad fairies who are perhaps lurking somewhere and trying to harm the baby. To show them that the baby is actually protected and they cannot harm the baby, so they just leave. So I wrote a song about it. It's called Fada de mi Corazón, which means the fairy of my heart, and it's sung from the point of view of a mother to a newborn girl. We will have a really amazing music video, by the way, with this one animation. I hope I can share it soon.
Oh, great, wonderful, yeah, yeah. So it's interesting because it's all these topics that are very, very traditional,
Yeah.
And that it's new music, but for me, having studied Judeo-Spanish and the women's traditions and all that for so long, it feels very, very familiar. It doesn't feel like something that is only contemporary. It feels completely rooted in the tradition.
Yes.
So it's really beautiful. And so your grandmother, you said she was from Fez.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting because there's actually a very fascinating Judeo-Spanish connection in Fez because mostly the Fassi community was Judeo-Arabic speaking. And so in the 15th century, when the Migurashim arrived, there was like a 2-century fight between the two communities, the Arabic speaking and the Judeo-Spanish speaking Jewish communities. And it appears that it was actually really only the women that kept the Judeo-Spanish into the 20th century. Yeah. And so I'm very interested to hear that your grandmother was one of those.
Yeah, she was. I think that's a little bit of a golden thread, that is woven throughout the tradition. It's like you can recognize yourself in it, although it's archaic. And for me, when I look at the past, I see the future. So maybe it's not that irrelevant as we think, especially if you look at the topics of their texts. Many times, they regard themselves as orthodox, but they write about magic realism. They write about alternative passing away ceremonies. What is there? Is there life? Is there death? Is there an afterlife? They talk about believing in magic. What are fairies if not magic? They have homoerotic poetry. There's even a text in the album about a transgender metamorphosis. It's like a sex change. Well, not really a sex change because back then you didn't have these surgeries, but a girl who wants to become a boy, and then her family accepts her as a son. And that's a text from the 11th century. That's very interesting.
La doncella guerrera. Is it that
Sorry?
one? La doncella guerrera.
No, originally it was called Maldicha Tripa de Madre, but I kind of renewed the text a little bit, and now the song is called Sin Dingo ni Varón, with the new composition and a slightly different text.
That's a trope. It's actually the girl that turns into a boy, often because the family only has girls and they need a boy.
Exactly. That's the theme also. So it starts with the father cursing the mother's womb because she didn't give him any sons, only 7 girls, as if that wasn't enough. And then one of the daughters steps up. She said, "Well, I have the making of a man.
I'll be a boy.
I will be the son you always wanted."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so anyway, we could go on for very long having yeah. So, but I'm thrilled to hear the songs when we'll be at the jazz festival and to continue seeing how you develop all these topics that are so important and relevant, really, and to break the myth of ancient disconnection. We are so connected to it.
It's totally here and now. It's still alive. Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to see you on the gig on November 14th at the London Jazz Festival. Yeah, and if you don't mind me saying, we're still crowdfunding for the album. So if you want to support the new Ladino album of original songs, Que Haber, which means what's new, just go to my website, nanimusic.com, and you still have time until November 14th.
Great. Wonderful. So everybody go to the website and come to the show. I'm looking forward to seeing you all there.
See you at the show. Thank you, Vanessa, for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching, and if you would like to book your tickets to see Nani perform live As part of the EFG London Jazz Festival 2021, please visit the JMI website, jmi.org.uk, and follow the links to the tickets there.